Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Minimalist and this is Literally Graphic. And today we are wrapping up my first Black Comics TBR with George Herriman's Krazy and Ignatz, 1916 to 1918. Love in a Kestle or Love in a Hut. This collection of comics was originally published by Fantagraphics in 2010. Born in New Orleans in 1880, it wasn't until long after George's death in 1944 that his birth certificate came to public light, revealing his mixed race and black identity. Growing up in Los Angeles, a teenager, Herriman contributed drawings to local newspapers. Moving to New York City in his 20s, Herriman was eventually hired by newspaper mogul William Randolph Hearst for the New York Evening Journal. According to his Goodreads profile, quote, Krazy Kat never achieved wide popularity among newspaper readers, though it attracted a highbrow following. Fans included Pablo Picasso, Charlie Chaplin, Walt Disney, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Frank Capra, H.L. Mencken, and Ernest Hemingway. Krazy Kat's lengthy tenure owed much to Hearst's personal love of the strip. Acceptance by the cultural mainstream grew after Herriman's death, as Krazy Kat appeared in an animation series by Paramount Studios and even in a novel. Throughout the 20th century, cartoonists have considered Krazy Kat the founding father or mother of sophisticated comic strips. End quote. While I generally focus on my opinions and insights as the unique product being offered on my YouTube channel, I end up having to do a lot of research for this video. As a total ignoramus when it comes to something so far removed from my time and place, I have chosen not to even attempt to repackage this information as my own, and will be clearly citing the articles I am drawing from, and will be linking them all below. Digging a bit into the meta review of the reviews territory, I found Aaron Humphrey's 2017 article in Comics Grid, The Cult of Krazy Kat, Memory and Recollection in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction, extremely interesting. While everything right now feels like it's instantly archived for the rest of eternity, at the time of publication, Krazy Kat was purely a product of the reader's memory, with very little ability to review after the day of publication. How might this affect the way Krazy Kat was reviewed, especially during Herriman's life? Even now, most of the comics available to our eyeballs are the Sunday comics. My personal observation on the art of the comic, Krazy Kat is as simplistic as it is detailed. With these being full-paged Sunday comics, there's often a lot of line work going on, divided by wide white borders. Each panel is generally numbered. The situations that Krazy and Ignatz get themselves into are often ridiculous, sometimes fantastical, and usually involve a brick of some kind. While I had often heard reference to how much influence Herriman had on later comics, I was very surprised in picking up Krazy and Ignatz how much of it is so evident in Crumb's work, for example. Ignatz also bears more than a passing resemblance to Pearls Before Swine's Rat. This particular collection has some examples of Herriman's pre-Krazy Kat work, which involve a lot of more cultural stereotypes and caricatures, including several cowboys and 2 Sambo characters. We then jump forward to 1916 and go through each week's Sunday comic until December 1918. As far as race and gender went, the Dallas News published an interesting article back in 2016 talking about reading blackness and passing back into Sunday comics after Herriman's own racial identity came to light 30 years after his death. They also noted that Krazy Kat is often referred to by both he, him, and she, her pronouns, which I had been wondering about, but chalked down to not being good enough at reading. Last year, in a hyperallergic article, David Carrier spent some time looking at the simplicity and never-changing quality of the world of Krazy Kat, certainly a departure from current trends, where long, fraught plots are king, but not something that terribly surprising when I picked up Krazy Kat. I also wasn't surprised when Carrier pointed out that Herriman is known to have participated in blackface minstrelsy, a very popular form of entertainment in his day. That continues to the present. Gabrielle Ballot also wrote a very insightful piece for The New Yorker in 2017 on the gender fluidity of Krazy Kat, which digs into the way that Herriman created mystery around himself in order to pass for white. Ballard also uniquely talked about the ways that Krazy Kat became a queer icon due to never having an assigned gender. One of the more interesting parts of the book, tucked in after the closing essays, highlights some of the historical references being made that went totally over my head. Each wasn't super interesting or hard-hitting, but the first point was a good reminder of exactly what the cultural milieu this cartoon was swimming in, namely a note that Mr. Mouse is whistling Old Zip COON, a term that had become racially charged by the time of this comic, and the reason that ice cream trucks should not play the tune Turkey in the Straw. The visually represented, quote, blind pig apparently refers to places where alcohol could still be purchased, quote, with a buck and a wink, as dry legislation began to spread across so-called America. This is the closest we get to disability representation. Not great, but never surprising. Class, not really touched on by any of the articles. I felt like it was being played with a bit. That said, I think that's only because it felt to me that the characters were speaking in an English that seems irregular to me. And despite trying not to judge people who don't use the kind of English I was taught in school, because that's stupid, I think that was at play here, especially since I have no idea what is causing what I perceive to be a heavily accented English. Herman and I have lived in opposite ends of Turtle Island in drastically different times. My only defense is that none of the Krazy Kat characters appear to be wealthy either. Either way, if it is a depiction of more average to poor people, it's still a bit tainted by every time an article mentions that the comic was not generally popular, but then lists a bunch of famous people who liked it. Obviously, I don't think something needs to be super popular with the masses in order to be good, but this kind of makes the comic seem really pretentious and or elitist. Drawing attention to a non-comic, if you're interested in the concept of passing, a recent and very popular book on this topic is The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. Certainly not a book above critique. I would then urge you to also watch a number of Black-owned voices reviews of the book, as the opinions are very diverse. There are obviously other books that also cover the subject, but of the ones I have read, none are coming to mind at this time. But wrapping up this review, I think I'll be rating Krazy and Ignatz, 1916 to 1918, Love in a Kestle or Love in a Hut, 3 out of 5 stars. While it wasn't super easy, it was interesting to read something so early in American comic history. Could I have dug deeper? Probably. Will I read further in these collections? Probably not soon. Bye y'all, keep reading, and resist white supremacy. And as always, Literally Graphic is recorded on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and Anishinaabe people, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat Nation. I live here because of British colonization, indigenous genocide, and more geographically specific, Treaty 13, also known as the Toronto Purchase, which was finalized in 1805 between representatives of the Crown and certain Mississauga peoples. This treaty was a lie and has since been broken many times over. Saying so reflects only my own small steps towards knowing the truth and does nothing for reconciliation.